My mic on? Oh, it's weird. I can't really hear myself. That's pretty cool. All right, so listen, I'm not going to go super deep. It's going to be super practical because I already shot a very long video between me and Dr. Amico, who's the first author of this, and we go super sciencey into it. And so, the benefit of smaller groups is that we get to be interactive, right? We can talk, right? And so I don't really want any questions unanswered today. Is that okay? So what I'd like everyone to do is take notes on questions, and each table at the end, I'm going to make sure all your questions are actually answered. Is that okay? Yes. Okay, so everyone has paper at each station, right? Yes. So pick a lead person, because that lead person is going to ask me the questions at the end. Is that okay? Oh, awesome. Very cool. And then if Paul's okay with it, later I'm going to do a Q&A, panel Q&A. Is that okay? Yeah? Yeah? As we wrap up, to be able to okay. So we'll be super intimate later on. Sounds good? Do I have a clicker or someone doing it for me? Oh, Brian. Thanks, Brian.
No, other Brian.
Thank you. All right. Okay. Whatever you want. You're the boss. Okay. So first of all, I'm a family guy. Okay, and so my father and I published this article right here very recently. It's called "The Recent Advances of Cannabidiol Studies in Medicinal Chemistry, Pharmacology, and Therapeutics." I can't even pronounce half that stuff. But my father he's an MD PhD. He's the Dean of Pharmacoinformatics at University of Houston. Okay, so for him to even talk about this, it's kind of a big deal. Okay, it's kind of a big deal. And the reason behind this is, well, this was published in 2021. Well, what happened in 2021 is that government regulations in the United States allowed us to talk about cannabinoids because it's outside of the Drug Enforcement Agency, right? Now it's in the Department of Agriculture, which means it's like a food. And so this is why in 2021, all these studies came out because we didn't need approval, right? And you're thinking, well, Paul, when did we do the NFL study? 2020. That was a pain in the ass to get published because 2021 didn't happen yet, and we couldn't get some specific approval at that time, so no journal wanted to publish this. This is why it's taken so long. You guys understand? Okay, so we submitted to over 120 different journals. Okay, so but this was sort of an introduction into the community, and I'm totally piggybacking on my dad's power, and that's totally okay because he's my family, right? and we started this as a tiptoe into the cannabinoids. Okay. And so you guys have to understand, 2021, it was a very tough, because we had all this data. It's on the Prime My Body website. We were able to share it. Well, where is it in the peer-reviewed journals? I'm sorry, I can't deliver, because there's so much stigma around this, but not anymore, okay? And so this is the QR code for the actual thing. So even though you can't take pictures of me or video, you can totally scan the QR code for the actual article. Is that okay? Okay. That's the actual article for me and my dad. There's going to be a couple more QR codes as well. Sounds good? And tell me if it works or not. Does it work? Yes. Okay, great. It's called Google Chrome, and you just hit the share button and create a QR code. It automatically gives me a dinosaur. I don't know why. All right, so, what did Jonas say earlier? Story sells and data what? Data tells? Okay, so let's start with the story, all right? Because stories do sell. And so, has anyone ever met a 17-year-old or known a 17-year-old that's super restless at night, that's always on social media, maybe a little bit anxiety, maybe a little depression, maybe they're a little unable to focus, right? Maybe they're a little bit defiant towards authority, always distracted, and they're always on an emotional roller coaster. Has anyone ever met a 17-year-old like that? You live with two 17-year-olds like that. Okay, okay. So wouldn't you say that this is the TikTok generation right now? Yeah? YouTube generation, TikTok generation, right? And so on the left-hand side is one of the technologies that we use. My favorite one is called a quantitative EEG. By the way, red is abnormal, yellow is abnormal, blue is normal. And so we see a lot of abnormalities. Now, Darren did a really good job and talked about theta and beta and alpha and stuff like that. We're seeing that this person has something called high power in the theta region. What is that? This is called a sleepy brain. Has anyone ever experienced a sleepy brain? Right now? You're like, knocked out. Okay, this is a sleepy brain. Okay, so on neuroimaging, we can see a sleepy brain. And so my little machine here is an artificial intelligence machine. It takes this data from the 17-year-old, compares it to thousands of the other people's data, and pops up a little thing. Maybe she has ADHD. Maybe she's got impaired memory symptoms, right? Or maybe she's on TikTok too much, right? And so, but this is the generation that we live, correct? Okay, but this is what Focus was created for. Can you vibe with me here? Okay, Focus is created for the new generation of hyperstimulation. Darren's brain's on fire. He's always hyperstimulated. I know because I saw his brain map, right? This is not a HIPAA violation because he posts on social media. So. and this brain, look at the 17-year-old. Okay, and I'll get to the NFL shortly, all right? So the 17-year-old, so this is a typical brain of a teen, something called a high theta to beta ratio. Theta means you're kind of sleepy, and beta means you're awake and attentive, right? Hopefully most of you are in beta right now. But if this person's brain is sleepier rather than they're awake, this is what's going on, right? So the top row right there where it's like yellow and red and stuff like that, that's concerning, okay? This person's sleep deprived, all right? And there's some other markers out in here, like theta-beta ratio, eyes open, visual processing, okay? This looks like the NFL players' brains. All right, but NFL players' brains are actually much worse, okay? But the youth is starting to go into this. So what its Focus designed for is designed for the new generation. Make sense? Okay, okay. So, I mean, people like before and afters, right? No, you cannot take pictures of this. People like before and afters, right? And so, if you look at this, once again, red is bad, okay? Dark blue is also very bad. And this pattern right here, I see this pattern, before I even meet somebody, usually I already have the brain map in front of me. I likely already know their habits. I likely already know the relationship with the parents, the relationship with the loved ones. I likely already know that they have a reverse sleep-wake cycle, meaning that they like to stay awake at nighttime, but like to sleep in during the daytime. I know they're overstimulated. I know this person probably has some traumatic responses, right? PTSD. I already know that. And so we have the technology to look at this, and that's the technology that we used in the former player study. Does that make sense? Okay, everyone understands the technology, right? Okay, great. And so all we're doing is we're looking at patterns compared to the normative data. We're not just saying, hey, your brain's lit up. We're saying, hey, compared to 5,000 other 17-year-olds, like this is what your brain's doing. Make sense? And so we're comparing to the normative data, but the normative data is moving, right? So what happens is that if the normative data is moving, people are becoming less attentive, all right? Anyone remember the show Real World? Yeah, what year was that? 1990, right? Okay, that's the year I actually came to America from China. And so Real World was the very first show that tapped into the ADD personality type. It was the very first show that had footages that were under 4 seconds. 4 seconds, okay? So why would they do that? Because they know, based on studies with a quantitative EEG, because this technology came out 50 years ago, they know that the brain is moving for less attention. All right. So for those of you scrolling through like TikTok or short form media, Are you staying on each one for 4 seconds? It's about 0.7 seconds now. In 1990, the attention span was 4 seconds, and we were like, holy crap, it's 4 seconds. Now it's 0.7. So what is focus designed for? The new stimulus, the new generation. Does that make sense? So should everyone be on it? Yeah, I think so, right? So this is a big deal. But even after some focus, they're still stimulated right there. I'm not saying that this cures any diseases or modifies any diseases. All I'm saying is that people generally have less attention spans, and they actually get better on this, right? Their theta-beta ratio actually decreases by 25%. Okay, they're 25% more attentive after this, right? Oh, this is 1 week, by the way. So I forgot to put that in the middle. This is 1 week difference. Yeah, right? 1 week, just taking it, one dropper full, told her to do it in the morning time. Well, actually, I told her to do it at nighttime because her day and nights are mixed up, right? And so this is a big deal because we're able to see that this occurs. So the only reason I actually got her to be on focus is because we did the NFL study back in 2020, right? This is 2022 now. We did the NFL study back in 2020. I'm like, you know what? Kids these days have a lot less attention. And we know that. We can see that on the brain mapping. There's a lot less attention here. And so what is the only thing that I know? Literally the only thing that I know that can improve attention in a short amount of time? Well, it's this. It's focus, right? And they're like, oh, okay, let's try it out and see what happens. Okay, well, let's do brain map again. Let's see what happens. Okay? So this is so common. This is such a common type of brain map. And I didn't pick like the best like progression after 1 week. I didn't pick any of that stuff. I just took a random data set out. That's all I really did because this is so common for the improvement in the resilience of the brain. Okay? And I want you guys to understand this before I get into the NFL data. Okay? So whenever we're talking about the NFL Former Players Association, I'm also talking about grandma or sister or granddaughter, okay? I'm also talking about those people because we're in this new generation where there's so much stimulus, there's not enough time for the brain to heal. Darren said the delta wave, which is the very top row, it's supposed to be blue, okay? The delta wave is supposed to be healed. It's supposed to be where the stem cells upregulate, right? It's where you produce growth hormone. It's when your adrenals become better, right? If I see that up there on the very top, I'm like, you're 17. I bet you have abnormal periods, don't you? Yeah. Okay, I bet you have really bad PMS, don't you? Oh, yeah. Yeah, I can see it on the brain, okay? I bet you that you have panic attacks. Am I correct? I say, yeah, okay. Okay, well, why is that? Because the attention span actually gotten shorter, sleep has been really wiped out, okay? So the quality of sleep is not necessarily there either. So some people said, hey, calm is supposed to calm most people. For about 2% of the population does the opposite, wires people up. Who feels that way? Who has seen people that feel that way? Okay. I hate to tell you this, but your brain is flip-flopped. Okay, there's areas of your brain that's being activated right now from overstimulation and poor quality sleep, okay? And so, but, as long as we understand what things do from the product side for the people are different, we can say, hey, let's just try this and see how it goes, all right? Does that make sense? Yes. Yeah, let's try and see how it goes. And a lot of times, it was like, here's focus, here's calm. Like, I don't know what's going to happen. I really don't. Let's try it out. But this is statistical significance of what's going to happen based on our former NFL player study, right? Just statistical significance. Now, some people use calm and they're focused. That's me. They're focused, right? I'm like, man, I'm good. I'm just chilling. It really depends. And so, let's go into this actual study for a second, okay? How do you tell if your brain's working? Can anyone tell me right now whether you think your brain is performing 100% right now or not? No? You use focus, right? Well, but how do you gauge? How do you turn your words into numbers? Does anyone know that? How do you turn your words? I'm fatigued, I'm tired, I'm inattentive. How do you turn that into numbers? Well, I just showed you on the brain maps, right? And so that's what we do, right? So my practice, called Texas Center for Lifestyle Medicine, we map almost everyone with any sort of issues, brain issues. Even if you're a little bit fatigued, let's try to figure out why. Oh, you think adrenals are shot. Well, let's look at your brain and see what it's really doing, right? And so what brain tech represents is it gives absolute clarity. I am super certain what your brain is doing compared to other people, your age and gender, based on this. It gives me a variety of information so I can compare to see how your brain is doing week after week, month after month. A lot of significance, connection, growth, and contribution. So here's the thing. By the way, these are the 6 human needs. I stole that from a Tony Robbins slide. These are the 6 human needs that we actually are very empowered to obtain. And if you have 3 of the human needs, things become addictive. And so let's look at this. You don't have brain maps, do you? No? Okay. And so how do you let someone know that, hey, you know what, your brain is valuable, and I want you to do well, I want you to feel better, and here's some products. How do you tell that without a brain map? Oh my gosh. Did you see my slides? No, I'm just joking. That's great. Turn the words into number by asking them for a number. On a scale from 0 to 10, 0 being dead, right? And 10 being, yes, I'm good to go. What is your number? How do you feel? Okay? And then when you talk to them, you write down that number. You're like, hey, 3 months ago, you were at a 2. Okay? And now you're at a 6. They're like, oh, really? I don't remember telling you that. I was like, yeah. Does that make sense? That doesn't take a $200,000 machine, right? So that is also important in our practice as well, because we don't care about what the brain looks like. We want to correlate that with how you feel. So we also ask numbers, right? So we use a score that's the most published score in the nation called a Promise Global Health Score. And it's basically a real quick 10-question, like physical and mental health status and how they feel. And so for you are able to tap into someone's story by getting them to assign a number to their journey. Does that make sense? Yes? Yes. Okay, good. Because that one thing, the minute that they give you an actual number, now it's solid, okay? Something happens in the prefrontal cortex. You're like, holy crap, I gave a number. I was like, oh man, it really is a 2 out of 10. Makes me reevaluate my life a little bit, right? And maybe it's a 7 out of 10. If it's a 7 out of 10, you're like, great, that's amazing. How do you get it to a 10? When do you feel like it's a 10? Does that make sense? All right, stories sell, right? This is my favorite cartoon of all time. This is the trauma of your normal. Does anyone know what trauma of your normal means? You go to a doctor's office, you feel like crap, and you're just tired, and you're like, I'm losing my memory, I'm losing my mind, I'm balding, and then they get a lab test for you, like, you know what, everything looks normal. Isn't that traumatic? That's traumatic, right? Okay. But what if you can give them something more? What if you can ask them, well, how do you feel, like 0 to 10? 10 being the best you ever felt in your life, and 2 being this, right? And they're like, well, I'm a 2 or I'm a 3. And you're like, well, when was the last time you were a 10? Half the people will start tearing up, I guarantee you, okay? And that's when you connect with them. Does that make sense? Because every time I ask that, especially when I first meet people, they go into their mind, and you can see like they're shifting their seat a little bit. They start tearing up. They're like, you know what, I never cry. I'm sorry. I never do this, right? And so as doctors, we can look at ranges that are normal, abnormal, but then they're on a spectrum. Does that make sense? So if you offer someone a spectrum of their own, they've now entered their own hero's journey, and they're the heroes. You're not the heroes. They're the heroes. Does that make sense? So this is a slide I actually took from my doctor's coaching program. And we talk about, let's shift from disease to function, right? That's another funny thing, right? I just put that up just to have fun. Let's shift from disease to function. So instead of saying, hey, you have ADHD, you have dementia, you have mild cognitive impairment, Jonas, you have CTE, you're screwed, right? Instead of just saying diseases, right? let's give them numbers. It's like, well, how do you feel? 0 to 10, because it's always on a spectrum. And the minute you ask them, when was the last time you felt that 10 out of 10, they're going to go back into their brain and say, you know what? Maybe it's possible to go back to that time. Okay, maybe it is. And can you guide me in going to that? Let's see what that looks like. This is called establishment of intention, right? So, Jonas yesterday talked about purpose, right? But actually, before purpose, you can't get someone's purpose unless you tell them my intention is for you to do well, right? And what great intention it is for you to ask them on a scale, 0 to 10, how do you feel? When was the last time you felt a 10? How do you get back there, right? That means your intention just came through. Does that make sense? Okay, this is called motivational interviewing, okay? And that's part of the sales process, you have to understand. Whew. All right, let's go into this. So this is the Forbes article that was created first. This is actually before the publication, because no one will publish us, because guess what? It was 2020, before 2021 occurred, and we looked at the data here. And so this is a video that's actually, I think it's in your app in the back office. I'm not going to play it. Let's go to the next one. Can we go to the next one? Oh, here we go. And then, so what we did was we actually looked at this thing called focus, all right? By the way, whenever you look at the actual publication of the article, the ingredients are all in the actual article, just like this. Why is that important? Yeah, it's unique to my body. No one can compete with that. Does that make sense? Y'all get me? Yes. Okay, and it's the only non-THC cannabinoid ever to be studied on the brain. Can y'all feel me? Yes. Why is that important? Huh? We're the only one. But not, well, actually, we're the first ones. Because guess who's doing it now? Other companies. Okay? I know, because they asked me to be on the advisory board. I'm like, no, I already published it. Why? Yeah. So if your actual ingredients of something that you have is in a publication, it makes it unique. Now, other companies will be like, oh, you know what? We have I don't know, give me a product, whatever product. We have this oil here, right? And this oil here, the ingredients in this oil has been independently studied in peer-reviewed research. But I'm like, well, time out. Well, that's great. They're independently studied. Has it been studied together? And the answer is no, because most companies do not have that level of capability to study an actual unique formulation, right? So Prime does. Does that make sense? Okay, it's kind of a big deal, right? And so whenever I can't get something done, I basically go to the smartest people in the world. So I found him in Dublin, Ireland, all right? Well, through LinkedIn. I didn't really go to Dublin. And so I put a post on LinkedIn. I was like, hey, I need help with this publication, right? And then he messaged me. He's like, hey, I'm Dr. Amico. I'm from the University of Dublin. I have 24 years of research in quantitative EEG analysis. My field of study is I can look at brain maps and give you a statistical score that someone's going to commit suicide in the next year. I'm like, you're fired. You're hired. Come on in, right? Let's take a look at this data. So when I send him the data, and he's like, holy shit, like this is kind of a big deal. I'm like, yeah, it's a big deal. And so Dr. Amico, through the University of Dublin, is able to use his connections, and then we started working with this journal called NeuroRegulation, who just had their annual conference here a few weeks ago, and they actually talked about the study. Isn't that interesting? By the way, I didn't know they're going to talk about study. Otherwise, I would have been there, but I didn't know. But someone sent me a slide afterwards. Hey, is this your publication? I'm like, yeah, where are you? And so there's going to be a video. I guess Brian will release it sometime, yeah? He gave me a thumbs up with me and Dr. Amico, and we just went hardcore into the science, so I'm going to blast through these slides, okay? I'm not going to bore you with the slides. That's me. So here's what we know about football players. Jonas, what do you know about football players? It's on here. No, you don't have mild cognitive. You're more likely to exhibit mild cognitive impairment. You got yourself some credit here. They're more likely to have brain shrinking on the MRI. They're more likely to have reduced neuron capacities. This is a marker called BDNF, brain-derived neurotrophic factor. And then where focus comes in is we just want to see what people do, right? By the way, this is the actual screenshot of the paper. So you can actually see the C of A for that batch for the players. Does that make sense? We actually had to have that, all right? Okay, so we're going to get straight into the results because once again, Dr. Amico and I go through like this quite a bit. But we're going to make it relatable, right? So result number 1, improve cognitive performance and emotional regulation. Just look at that statement for a second. What does that mean to you? What does that mean to you? Anyone? Thoughts and feelings, exactly. What about the thoughts and feelings? Clear, okay. Okay. Are any of those words diagnoses? Oh, so why don't y'all get together and write these things down about focus, because none of what you said are diagnoses. Does that make sense? Yeah. But how do we draw that conclusion? It's from the clinical trial. Does that make sense? Yeah. Okay. Well, I try. Slide, basically, it's a display graph. Result number 2, improvement in attention. What does that mean to you? Clarity, okay? Once again, that's a really great word to talk about with people. Let's go back to that person. How do you feel right now? I'm a 2 out of 10. You have problems with clarity? Yeah. Yeah. What things other people say? You have problems with brain fog? It's like, yeah. By the way, brain fog is not a diagnosis. So, yeah. What do other people say? Do you feel not present or maybe dissociated? What were you saying? Hysterectomy? What? Oh, distracted. My wife's an OBGYN, so I have like selective hearing. You ever feel more distracted? If you were less distracted, wouldn't you think you're better than a 2 out of 10? Yeah? Okay. Didn't you just turn this into their story? Because they gave you the power of their story. They're at a 2 out of 10 right now. Or maybe they're at an 8 out of 10. You're like, well, why the hell didn't you say 10? Right? If you were 10 versus 8, do you think if you're less distracted, you can get to a 10? If you think you're more clear, you get to a 10? So this is what this means, okay? So don't let a clinical trial and all its fabulous stuff like distract you from the story that you have to tell. Does that make sense? Okay. All right, improvement in recognition and classification speed. Let's start with the first, improvement in recognition. What does that mean? What does recognize mean? Awareness. Okay? And what about classification speed? Anyone know what that means? What shape is this? How do you know? We're not going to get into that right now. Darren, we're not going to get into that right now. Okay, so Jonas says that this is a rectangle, right? Okay. What's in this rectangle? Green circle, right? So everything's energy. Atoms. So what's happening here is that they're actually being tested on the classifications of exactly what we just went through. Does that make sense? And they have to like select like really fast. It's class up, right? So if they're like half a second delay, they're like, right? That classification speed actually improved. Now, we're only talking about like a couple minutes after the administration of focus here, right? That's NFL player just fell down. So, yeah, it was the fridge. So the classification speed is that you're able to think more clearly, you're able to delineate things more clearly, okay? And so what What does that do to someone who's tired and driving on a highway? Oh my gosh, reaction times, right? Okay, and classification speed. What if they're able to? What if they didn't see the stop sign? They crash. All right. So does it surprise you that a lot of the people with concussive injuries can't have huge delay in classification? Does that surprise you? No. Same thing with the teenager, the 17-year-old, right? Getting a lot of visual stimulation at nighttime. Same thing. All right, this is the biggest learning point. So focus is showing things that are actually opposite of THC-containing compounds, okay? Because some THC-containing compounds, they actually slow classification down, right? Because they're designed to relax and sleep and chill, right? When you're sleeping, you don't care if this is a rectangle or not. Does that make sense? And so focus is a very unique product because it's got the opposite of some of the effects, the desired effects, right? And so a lot of if you ever go on Instagram and you see like Dr. Daniel Amen or Peter Attia and all these people that talk about like the detrimental effects of THC on brain and brain shrinking, right? Well, that's because one, they're smoking it, okay? So any sort of combustion actually creates that effect, all right? And two, they're at extremely high doses, right? And so if you actually look at studies that's done with other THC-containing compounds, whenever it's ingested orally, it has the opposite effect. It actually improves cognitive response, right? But specifically just talking about focus, it's designed for focus. Does that make sense? Like I said, that 2% of the people, Darren's one of them, he said he'd take it to go to sleep, right? Because his brain is kind of wired. And the reason is, at nighttime, whenever you're overstimulated, and you think about 80,000 things going on with your life, if you take focus, you can actually focus on one or two things and create that calm. Does that make sense? That's how it works, okay? Now you know why focus works for people at nighttime now? Yeah? If I take it at nighttime, I will be up for 4 hours and I'll like write a book. You Jonas too, right? Yeah, we're the same. We're the same. So we know that there's cannabinoid effects on the highest level of competition, right? We know the brain health is related to the careers as well. And brain performance is actually more important after retiring. Now, these 4 bullet points, who else do they apply to? Huh? Humans, everyone, right? Who else? Well, not who else other than humans, but what group of people? Huh? Mothers, yes. Women experience more cognitive decline after the children leave the home because they literally retired from being the identity of a mother. Okay? All right, who else? Huh? Empty nest syndrome, absolutely, absolutely. Who else? Teenagers. Why teenagers? Overstimulation, but not only that, a lot. So I'm from Texas. In Texas, high school football is everything, right? And so some teenagers, they go off to college and they no longer have an identity of being the team captain. They go into this depressive state. This is also the military. They return from tours, okay? And they can't stand being at home because their identity, if someone they're in military, right? And so it really applies to across a whole lot of different people. You just have to understand that we have to create this source, this sense of balance, and it really starts by asking, hey, 0 to 10, how you feel, okay? 0 being dead, 10 being the best you ever felt, and then what's keeping you from a 10? When was the last time you felt like a 10? Okay, that establishes your intention, okay? I already talked about this. So this is a summary slide for the study, right? So we know it affects cognitive response. All right, what's cognitive response? What does that mean? Thinking. Yeah, thinking, classification, Emotional response, what does that mean? Feelings, okay? By the way, emotional response, whenever we're talking about this, we're not saying that, hey, you go into a room and you put all your emotions aside, I want to be the superhero. No, emotional response is that you get to express your emotions better through crying, through unity. Does that make sense? Okay, so we're not talking about the westernized version of emotional response as I have to be here for you, therefore I'm stoic. That's not what we're talking about, all right? Physical response is the reaction time. That's the example is talking about, hey, you ever feel like you missed a stop sign? Oh, that's a really good question to ask. Hey, have you ever missed a stop sign or a stoplight, like on accident? That's kind of a big deal, right? Or the kids in the back seat? That's kind of a big deal, right? By the way, and this is so common. Every day I'm getting a yes, okay? And right after the yes is tears. Make sense? Okay. So whenever we looked at processing and attention and response times, we want to be able to draw a conclusion. This is the conclusion of the study, right? So the ability for the brain to sustain attention and resilience, ability to improve in processing speed, and ability to have, I haven't talked about this yet, the ability to improve visual processing. This is really important. So has anyone looked at like a flashing video and it says that this video may induce seizures? Why? Yeah. Jonas, how are you so smart? Yeah. So if you think that it only induces seizures in people with epilepsy, well, how does it make the rest of the humans feel? Like they want to have a freaking seizure, right? So these poor players, we actually did that for them. We flashed the checkerboard, this high stimulation visual response. I'm like, sorry, you may have a seizure, you may not, right? But no one likes that. So the visual processing is so slowed, this population is shown to have higher evidence of epileptiform discharges. Basically, it's doctor talk for seizures. Does that make sense? Now, any human can actually develop seizures, right? And so visual processing improvement. Now, the reason why this slide is so important is because, remember, we tested them beforehand, okay? They already got stimulated by this. And then we tested them again. Technically, they should have done worse the second time because they've already been overstimulated. Does that make sense? This is kind of a holy shit moment, right? We're like, well, not only did you not get worse, all I wanted to know is, does your visual processing get worse on the second time with focus, right? That was our endpoint. But it actually got better, okay? So that was extremely surprising to me. It really made me go back and think about neurochemistry. So does this mean cannabinoids are nootropic? Who knows the word nootropic? Someone give me a definition. That's not Jonas. I'm sorry? Yes and no. Yes and no. Sort of. Yes. I hate saying yes to Darren because you know everything. Stop it, Darren. We're not going to hear from the advisory board for a second. Anybody else from this side of the room? What is you guys know this word nootropic or no? Yeah, it changes the brain frequencies, right? Okay, but what else does it do? Nootropic. What is the definition? So what are some examples of nootropics that are out there? Memory and learning. Caffeine. But hold on, caffeine, asterisk, caffeine only in its natural form. When you take the caffeine and put it into Red Bull, it does the opposite. It's an anti-nootropic. Okay? Huh? What is that? Dopamine? Oh, okay, yeah. So that's a nootropic as well. And then you also have psilocybin, you have all these different things as well, right? So what we want to do is that we understand that if cannabinoids are actually nootropic, it's never really been proven until this study. Does that make sense? Well, it's kind of a big deal. It's the first study to ever show that cannabinoids are possibly a nootropic, right?
So you're saying coffee is a nootropic?
Coffee is a nootropic, yes.
Okay, good.
But unless your coffee has mold in it. And so last thing is, this is a bit of a surprise for you guys. So I'm not that smart, so I interview the top experts in the world in brain health. Dr. Daniel Amen's one of them. So if you go to betterbrain.info, we're releasing a free summit in December. And then, where's Jonas and Darren? Y'all are going to be in it. You just don't know it yet. So we're going to be, I think there's 48 people on the summit so far in December. But we're actually going to talk about all elements of brain health, more than you can possibly want to know. All right? All right, thank you.